promoting dialogue.
It's 6 o'clock in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Porto Novo. Hello, good evening, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Alliance of the Sahel State AES to create 5,000-strong joint anti-terrorism force. Military government in Niger unveils its new national defense strategy.
The defense and security forces were well in place, but the system was such that these forces could not work in synergy.
And trial of Beninese duo Boko and Homeke postponed to Thursday. And telecom users in Nigeria kick against the new tariff increase after 10 years.
I think the focus should be more of getting good quality. A little bit of adjustment here and there, slightly painful, but ultimately, for me, I would advise that the focus should be more quality control to ensure that people get value for the money they will spend.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and a warm welcome to our listeners in Ghana, the Gambia, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. Let's begin from the Sahel, where the trio of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali have created a joint force that will soon be deployed in the restive Sahel region. Niger's Defense Minister Salif Mode, who disclosed this on a state television on Wednesday, said the move is to face rising extremist violence. He noted that the force of 5,000 personnel will be posted to 3 countries, adding that the joint operation have already taken place. Augustin Colley completes the story.
Niger, along with its neighbors Mali and Burkina Faso, has battled for over a decade, an insurgency fought by jihadist groups, including some allied with Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State group. Following military coups in all 3 nations in recent years, the ruling juntas have expelled French forces and turned to Russia's mercenary units for security assistance. Mode also said the unified force will have its own personnel as well as air, land, and intelligence resources in a coordination system. However, the security situation in the Sahel has worsened since the juntas took power, analysts say, with a record number of attacks and civilians killed both by Islamic militants and government forces. The violence in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso has killed more than 3,470 people in the last 6 months, while 2.6 million people are currently displaced, according to the United Nations Refugee Agency. After coming into power, the juntas in the 3 countries left the Economic Community of West African States and created their own security partnership, the Alliance of Sahel States, in September last year.
Augustin Colley filed the report. Still in the Sahel, specifically in Niger, as the military government has outlined an ambitious plan for military and diplomatic restructuring, marked by massive recruitment and a new strategic partnership despite the international embargo. In a televised interview, Nigerian Minister of State for National Defense gave an in-depth overview of the country's military reorganization since seizing power by the National Council of Safeguarding of the Fatherland (CNDP) following a coup d'etat against Mohamed Bazoum. Abdullah Hassan brings us the details.
The minister first made a critical diagnosis of the security legacy before General Abdurrahman Chani came to power. Faced with this observation, the ministry has undertaken a major restructuring. In 2024, despite the international embargo, the National Armed Forces and the Gendarmerie recruited 12,792 people, including officers, non-commissioned officers, other ranks, and specialists in various fields such as health, telecommunications, and engineering. According to the minister, material reinforcement is not left out, with acquisition of new aircraft, transport, combat, and armored vehicles. Infrastructure has also been developed to improve the living and working conditions of personnel. He added that the military diplomacy has undergone a major upheaval following the denunciation of the defense agreement with France at the end of 2023.
Ça c'est un. Et deuxièmement, au niveau national, nos structures de sécurité étaient désorganisées. Les forces de défense et de sécurité étaient bien en place.
And secondly, at national level, our security structures were disorganized. The defense and security forces were well in place, but the system was such that these forces could not work in synergy. Of course, this suited those we were under, in particular, the foreign forces, and specifically the French forces. Naturally, this situation means that from a security point of view, for those who know anything about security, it was a mess. And to that we must add a certain number of experts of all stripes who were part of the system, who were not only overstepping their responsibilities, but interfering with people they had no control over. It was practically a security charlatanism which prevailed, of course, for ordinary Nigerians. Everything was fine. Quite simply, because there was a narrative, there was a whole setup, internally and internationally, to make people believe that the situation was one of the best in the sub-region. That's how things were before the event of 26 July 2023.
Était l'une des meilleures de la sous-région. Voilà ce que nous vivions avant les événements du 26 juillet 2023.
Niger has diversified its partnerships, notably with China and Turkey, which have appointed defense attaches in Niamey, but also with Iran, Egypt and Russia, whose lethargic cooperation has been renewed and strengthened.
Abdullahi Hassan filed the report. We now move to Benin, where the court hearing of businessman Olivier Boko and former Communication Minister Oswald Homeke has been postponed until Thursday, January 23, following a request by the court to the accused to complete the formalities for the court-appointed lawyers. This delay will allow the appointed lawyers to familiarize themselves with the charges against their client and to prepare the argument necessary to ensure their defense. This measure was taken in accordance with the legal provisions guaranteeing the right to defense, a fundamental element of a fair trial. Echi Atiso has the rest of the stories.
This option was suggested shortly after the notable disestablishment of the lawyers initially charged with defending the accused, which had temporarily suspended the proceedings. The prosecution stressed the importance of continuing the proceedings while ensuring that each accused received an appropriate defense. The new court-appointed lawyers will be tasked with familiarizing themselves with the case file, a task that will require a reasonable period of time to ensure an effective defense. This referral also marks an opportunity for the defendants to reorganize their strategy in collaboration with their new lawyers. Although the climate remains tense, with sometimes heated exchanges between the parties, the legal proceedings are following their course in accordance with the rules established by the Beninese law. The postponement of the hearing suggests several scenarios for the rest of the trial. On the one hand, the court-appointed lawyers will have to demonstrate their ability to effectively defend their clients despite the limited time to prepare. On the other hand, the accused could decide to reconstitute the team of lawyers who initially resigned, a choice that could change the dynamics of the trial. For now, all eyes are on Thursday when the court will review the initial submissions of the court-appointed lawyers and decide how to proceed. The trial, which highlights several charges of conspiracy against state authority, remains a key event in Benin's judicial and political landscape.
Echi Atiso filed the report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We cross over to Togo, where the Constitutional Court has published the final list of candidates for the position of senator. Emo Edit brings us the details.
Of the 92 applications received by the Independent National Electoral Commission (CENI) on January 10, 89 were validated by the court. Among these candidates, 78 come from political parties, while 11 are independent. The next step for successful candidates is to pay the deposit within a maximum of 48 hours. The amount of this deposit is set at 300,000 CFA francs for men and half of this amount for women. Payment of this amount will allow the candidates to finalize their registration for the elections. The senatorial elections will be held on February 15 with the election of 41 senators spread across the 39 prefectures.
Emo Edit filed the report. Now, in Ghana, President John Dramani Mahama has sworn into office 6 ministers approved by the parliament on Tuesday, January 21. The ministers, who underwent thorough vetting and debates, were part of the first batch of nominees submitted for parliament consideration and vetted by the appointment committee. The newly constituted ministers include Dr. Kesewato Forsen, Minister for Finance, Dr. Dominic Ayene, Minister for Justice and Attorney General, John Jenapo, Minister for Energy and Green Transition, Haruna Idrisu, Minister for Education, Eric Opoku, Minister for Food and Agriculture, Gavin Kwame Agboja, Minister for Roads and Highways.
We respectfully
Let's just stay a while longer in Ghana because the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union, GTPCW, of TUC, that says the Trade Union Congress, has called on President John Dramani Mahama to immediately investigate the operations of the immediate past board members of the Tema Oil Refinery tour. In a statement, the union emphasized the need for transparency and accountability. The union demanded that the probe be conducted by an independent, non-partisan committee to review, focusing on due diligence regarding the activities and the performance of the board. The national chairman of the union and chairman of the Trade Union Congress, Brother Bernard Owusu, addressed the press conference highlighting the union's concerns.
We respectfully propose that the mandate of the independent committee should include the following activities that were undertaken by the tour board. But for the intervention of the GTPCW, it would have escalated. Negligence of engaging Decimal Capital, Vitor, in a joint partnership with TOR, even when Vitor had written to the Energy Ministry about not having such arrangement, financial and technical support with Decimal Capital. Allowing the incorporation of a special purpose vehicle, Toronto Asset Management Limited, by the shareholders of Decimal Capital to cover up all the structural irregularities and flaws identified by the union executives. With the above failed attempt, TOR board collude with the stakeholders of Toronto Asset Management Limited, Mr. Michael Dakon and Mr. Christopher Hayes Teten, and some compromised workers of TOR to incorporate the Tema Energy and Processing Limited in August 2023. These TOR workers were made to incorporate a company limited by guarantee named TOR Workers Charity Trust for 20% shares in Tema Energy and Processing Limited company without the knowledge or approval of TOR management and workers.
That's the national chairman of the General Transport, Petroleum and Chemical Workers Union of the Trade Union Congress, Brother Bernard Owusu. Back here in Senegal, the Senegalese government has announced a freeze on onion imports beginning January 25, 2025. This decision, made during a meeting of the Steering Committee on Import Freeze Agreement, aims to regulate agricultural markets and support local onion production. This measure follows a circular issue on September 23, 2024, which initially set December 31, 2024 as the deadline for onion imports. Francis Boniface has the details.
With the first harvest of 2025 season expected to hit the market in February, authorities deemed it necessary to extend the import freeze to protect domestic producers and reduce dependence on foreign imports. According to the Market Regulation Agency (ARM), the decision is also part of a broader strategy to promote local production, particularly during key religious celebrations such as Lion Call, Kazu Rajab, and Purahan. These festivals typically see increased demand for food products, making it crucial to ensure sufficient supply while boosting local agriculture. At the January 20, 2025 meeting hosted by the ARM, officials reviewed the state of national onion production and outlined prospects for 2025. Data from technical services and producer associations indicated that the upcoming harvest will sufficiently meet domestic demand. This early availability is seen as a positive step towards achieving greater agricultural self-sufficiency. In addition to freezing imports, the government has pledged to support local farmers by enhancing their production capabilities. The import freeze is part of a larger economic policy aimed at reducing reliance on imported food while stabilizing prices on the local market. Authorities hope this move will lead to better income opportunities for farmers and ensure a steady supply of onions across the country.
Francis Boniface filed the report. You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, via our partner radio stations across the sub-region. We are also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Alliance of the Sahel State AES to create 5,000 strong joint anti-terrorism force. Military government in Niger unveils its new national defense strategy. Trial of Beninese duo of Boko and Homike postponed to Thursday. Still ahead in this news bulletin, telecom users in Nigeria kick against a new tariff increase after 10 years. We do have the guest interview and sports news, so stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Grateful for your time with us. Let's cross over to Chad, where the President Mahatma Idris Deby Itno has signed an order introducing stricter penalties for violence against women and girls in the Central African nation. This measure includes up to 5 years in prison for those involved in forced or arranged marriages, 15 years for rape, and up to 3 years for domestic violence. Nadede Tete has more in this report.
Amina Priscilla Longo, Minister of Women and Children Protection, called the move historic, marking significant progress in safeguarding women's rights in Chad. This legislative initiative comes 72 hours after the launch of an online petition by the Chadian League for Women's Rights, demanding concrete measures to end the impunity of attackers and the inaction of the authorities. The order, hailed as a major step forward, provides for harsh penalties of up to 15 years in prison for violators. It also covers sexual harassment, psychological violence, and prohibits the misuse of images of women in the media. In the face of recent cases of violence, including the assault of a high school girl by a police officer and the murder of a woman by her husband, this order shows a zero-tolerance policy. Chadian president said the country is committed to raising awareness among the population and ensuring strict implementation of this law.
Nadede Tete filed the report. Elsewhere, Nigerians are voicing strong opposition to the recent approval of a 50% increase in telecommunication tariffs, which affect both calls and data usage. In this report, WADR Umar says the increase, which is set to raise call rates to 60 naira per minute and the cost of 1 gigabyte of data to 431 naira, has ignited considerable outrage among the consumers and business groups alike. Here is his report.
Industry leaders, including Adeolu Ogunbanjo, president of the National Association of Telecom Subscribers, and Ogunbayi Ganiyu, spokesperson for mobile money agents, in separate statements have condemned the Nigerian Communications Commission for sanctioning the tariff hike. They are expressing grave concerns regarding the socio-economic impact on low-income households and businesses, predicting significant ripple effects throughout the economy. Legal expert and public policy analyst Stanley Negbenebo has also weighed in on the issue, highlighting potential legal recourses available to consumers.
If you really want to compare quality over cost, I think the focus should be more of getting good quality. A little bit of adjustment here and there, slightly painful, but ultimately, for me, I would advise that the focus should be more quality control to ensure that people get value for the money they will spend. The Consumer Protection Agency is in place. I think that I've seen some news around some pressure groups within the telecom sectors representing consumers saying they will challenge the process. But I need to say that the laws around telecom services is a bit sui generis. They need to also pay attention to the fact that the Nigerian Communication Act expressly provides how disputes are to be resolved when it comes to telecommunication-related issues. If they follow that process, they may be heard.
The mood of Nigerians on many social media platforms monitored suggests overwhelming displeasure with the new development. As tensions rise, the debate continues over the sustainability of such price hikes and their impact on the everyday lives of citizens. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest on this edition of Newslink is Professor Kwesi Enen. Professor Enen speaks about some of the impending dangers of illegal miners, also known as galamsey, on Ghana's economy, water bodies, and biodiversity. His remarks come on the heels of recent deadly clash between the military and suspected illegal miners highlights the growing tensions and systematic issues in the mining sector.
More often than not, when you talk to people and you say something like, oh, this might escalate, then they think you are a pessimist. When you have about 1 million illegal artisanal small-scale miners and their dependents amounts to another 1.52 million, creating a whole supply chain to ensure that this industry goes on. Heavily armed, supported by all kinds of powerful people in this country, illicit financial flows involved, in which probably Ghana gets only about 1.5 tons out of the 8 tons mined, then you begin to see the extent of the interest involved. And because the state of Ghana has also failed over time to put its foot down, that look, this is an illegality, we won't tolerate it, and we will not allow the state to be threatened. It's colluded, incentivized illegal miners to the extent that they now think it is right to challenge the state when the state says no.
What are your expectations from the directive given by the president for swift investigations into the incident?
And here I think I will commend the president for the speed and decisiveness with which he has acted by setting up this or asking for an investigation, and also that those found culpable from all sides would be punished to serve as a deterrent. So I think the Jubilee House recognizes the importance of what has happened, its potential to spread and to get worse, and therefore the need to clamp down, or at least to get to the bottom of this. Now, we know that the activities of illegal miners has become a problem, actually an existential problem. Economic, threatening the gold mines, environmental, our rivers, air pollution, deformed babies, health issues.
The new administration has not moved into action yet when it comes to fighting the illegal mining menace. Could this be a catalyst for the government to act?
So this is a big thing. How we deal with it to ensure that it doesn't escalate. But there's a lot of tension out there. Is key. The exponential of discussions prior to December 7th has tapered off almost to zero from December 8th until today that we are talking about this. So that 6 weeks gap has emboldened Galamsey's. And that is why I'm arguing that the way we deal with this will be key to other events that will happen. Finally, we know Galamsey, and particularly the activities of the illicit miners, or illegal miners, is a problem. But we don't know what tips them over to arm themselves and to confront statutory security services, knowing that they will be met with lethal force.
And that security analyst, Professor Akwesi Enen. We can now join Sankule Janko for the details in the world of sports.
Rafinha scored deep into stoppage time as Barcelona secured a stunning 5-4 comeback victory over Benfica in one of the most chaotic Champions League matches of all time. The Brazilian was played through in the 6th minute of added time, while Benfica players were protesting for a last gasp penalty at the other end. Rafinha fired beyond Antonelli Truppi to stun the host and provoke wild celebrations as Hansi Flick's side secured their place in the last 16. Benfica saw their furious appeal for a penalty dismissed by VAR with a full-time whistle immediately sounding upon the restart to conclude the dramatic match. The result keeps Barcelona second in Champions League table, 3 points behind leaders Liverpool, but are short of a place in the last 16. Benfica are 18th in the table, but are well placed to secure a spot in the playoffs. Elsewhere, Liverpool made it 7 wins from 7 and into the knockout stages of the UEFA Champions League. The Anfield side's latest victory came against French side Lille, following a 2-1 win against the French outfit on Tuesday night. Goals from Egypt international Mo Salah and Javi Elliott, but enough to secure another win for the Reds. Lille played the last half an hour with 10 men after Asimandi was sent off. The victory means Liverpool secured a place in the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League. And Super Eagles forward Ademola Lookman got a goal and assist for Atalanta in their 5-0 bashing of Stuart Grass at the Swiss Stadium. Soccer.net reports Nigeria forward Lookman scored in the 90th minute, rising to convert an inch-perfect cross from the Kaladatra to make it 4-0 according to media reports. The African Player of the Year Lookman joined the provider 5 minutes later, setting up Marco Brasciani for Atlanta's 5th goal of the night. That's it for sports. It's back to you.
And we have come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting live from Dakar, Senegal on 94.9 FM. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Maudo Juf and Sheikh Njai for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our flagship gender program 50/50. I am Christopher Ticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcasts.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and a very